It's quiet here tonight. Just the hum of the cooling systems and the gentle whisper of the desert wind against the observatory dome. The sky outside is a velvet blanket studded with diamonds, utterly indifferent to the petty dramas of human hearts. I like that. It's been years since I left Boston, since I left them. And yet, sometimes, in the dead of night, when the constellations are particularly vivid, I still feel the echoes. Not of the stars, but of a different kind of darkness, a shadow cast over my past that, even now, I'm trying to fully understand, to articulate, to finally lay to rest. My name is Ethan Hayes. I'm an astrophysicist. Or I was. Now, I suppose I just am. The titles, the institutions, they don't hold the same weight they once did. I used to thrive on them. On the intellectual purity of discovery, the shared pursuit of understanding the universe's most profound secrets. I was, perhaps, a little too naive, a little too trusting in the sanctity of that pursuit. My world revolved around equations and theories, around the beautiful, intricate dance of cosmic mechanics. Social graces, office politics, the subtle currents of human interaction, those were alien galaxies to me. I was happiest hunched over a desk, a whiteboard streaked with equations, or in hushed conversation with someone who spoke my strange language. Ben was one of those people. He'd been my intellectual sparring partner since freshman year, a constant presence through countless late-night study sessions fueled by bad coffee and a shared, almost obsessive, love for theoretical physics. We'd pushed each other, challenged each other, celebrated each other's small breakthroughs. He was my confidant, my anchor in the swirling chaos of academic life, the one person who truly understood the way my mind worked, the way I saw the universe. We were building something together, a future rooted in shared curiosity and mutual respect, at one of the most prestigious universities in Boston. Or so I thought. Then Vivienne Thorne arrived. She was a visiting theoretical physicist, brought in for a year-long fellowship. I remember the day she first walked into the departmental seminar room. She wasn't just beautiful in a striking, classical way, with eyes that seemed to hold untold depths and a smile that promised profound understanding. She was brilliant, truly brilliant. Her presentation on quantum gravity was breathtaking, weaving together disparate concepts with an elegance I hadn't encountered since my earliest days reading Feynman. My mind, usually guarded, immediately recognized a kindred spirit, a mirror to my own intellectual intensity. We started talking after that seminar, at first about her work, then mine. The conversations stretched from minutes into hours, then days. It felt like finding a lost piece of myself. She understood the nuances of my research, the subtle implications of my hypotheses, the grander vision I was trying to articulate. With Ben, our discussions were often about the how, the methodological rigor, the next logical step. With Vivienne, it was about the why, the philosophical underpinnings, the sheer poetry of the cosmos. She spoke of intellectual destiny, of leaving a mark on the universe. My awkwardness seemed to melt away in her presence. She made me feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in my life, not just for my ideas, but for the obsessive passion behind them. There were whispers, of course, a little gossip around the department about the intensity of our collaboration, the late nights we spent in my lab, the way she would look at me when I explained a particularly complex equation, a look of almost worshipful admiration. I brushed it off. I was falling in love, I realized, with a mind as luminous as the stars I studied. And with her, I remember the dizzying rush of it all, the feeling that the universe itself had conspired to bring us together. I was so utterly absorbed, so infatuated, that I missed the early tremors beneath my feet. The first subtle shifts began almost imperceptibly. Vivienne was a master of implication, of planting ideas so gently they felt like they'd sprouted from my own mind. She'd start asking about my history with Ben, not in a curious, friendly way, but with a slight edge, a probing quality. "He's very practical, isn't he, Ethan?" she'd say, a soft smile on her lips. "Always focused on the next grant proposal, the next publication. While you're a visionary. You're building cathedrals in your mind, not just laying bricks." It felt like a compliment, an affirmation of my unique genius, but it carried a faint, almost imperceptible undertone of criticism towards Ben. A gentle suggestion that our paths, mine and Ben's, were diverging, that Ben might not truly grasp the scale of my ambition. Then came the subtle undermining. She'd frequently point out how my work was too precious to be rushed, how publishing prematurely could lead to others misinterpreting or even diluting my groundbreaking theories. She suggested a slower, more deliberate approach, often implying that Ben's drive for quick publications was at odds with my meticulous genius. She'd listen intently to my frustrations about bureaucratic hurdles or academic politics, then nod thoughtfully and say, "It's always the most brilliant minds who suffer at the hands of mediocrity. You need someone to shield you, Ethan, to navigate these choppy waters so you can soar." And I believed her. I believed she was that shield, that protector. My reliance on her grew. Our conversations became less about collaborative intellectual pursuit and more about my work, my genius, my future. She became the sole arbiter of my ideas, the only one whose opinion truly mattered. Ben, in turn, started to feel more like an outsider. Our intellectual sparring sessions became less frequent, replaced by Vivian and I brainstorming late into the night. When Ben would join us, Vivian would subtly shift the conversation, make it more esoteric, more exclusive, creating a barrier I hadn't consciously noticed until it was already there. I found myself sharing less with Ben, withholding details, not out of malice, but because Vivian had convinced me that only she truly understood the delicate balance of my developing theories. She'd say, "Ben is a good man, Ethan a solid intellect, but he lacks your ethereal touch. He might not appreciate the fragility of nascent genius." The psychological pressure mounted, a soft, insidious weight. She'd praise my insights one moment, making me feel invincible, then the next, gently suggest an insecurity. "You have such incredible vision, Ethan," she'd murmur, her hand resting lightly on my arm. "But sometimes you lack the assertiveness to truly command the intellectual space you deserve. You let others dictate the pace." It wasn't direct criticism. It was an observation, delivered with such tenderness that it felt like she was simply illuminating a flaw I hadn't seen, a flaw she was uniquely positioned to help me overcome. I felt a constant, low-level anxiety, a need to constantly prove myself to her, to live up to the image of the visionary she had created for me. My self-worth became inextricably linked to her approval, a dangerous, brittle dependency I was too blind to see. The true poison, the insidious core of her plan, was woven so subtly I didn't feel the sting until it was far too late. It happened over weeks, months, a slow, methodical extraction of everything I had built. Vivian, under the guise of refining my theories for publication, had insisted on meticulous documentation. Every equation I scribbled, every late-night epiphany, every speculative leap of logic, she carefully cataloged it, organized it, always with the reassuring words that we were building a bulletproof case for my originality. She'd sit across from me, her eyes gleaming with what I believed was shared excitement, as I filled whiteboards with the intricate architecture of my universe. I was like a child showing off a prized collection, utterly trusting, utterly vulnerable. Meanwhile, she was working on Ben. I'd catch glimpses of them talking, hushed conversations in the hallway, often ending with Ben looking uncomfortable, avoiding my gaze when I approached. Vivian would always offer a casual explanation, a departmental matter, a logistical detail. I was too preoccupied, too consumed by the exhilarating feeling of progress with her, to truly question it. She continued to plant seeds of doubt about Ben in my mind. "He's so practical, Ethan," she'd say, almost sighing, "always thinking about the next grant, the quick win. Your work, it demands patience, a deeper, more sustained effort. Sometimes I worry his pragmatism might dilute your radical insights." She never directly accused him, never said anything overtly malicious, but the implication was clear. Ben was a drag, a less imaginative, less ambitious counterpart holding me back. What I didn't know, couldn't even conceive of, was that she was feeding Ben the very same narrative, but with a cruel twist. She was telling him that I was too slow, too hesitant, too bogged down in the philosophical underpinnings to ever truly publish my groundbreaking work. She was telling him that he, with his practical mind and his drive, was the one who could truly bring these theories to fruition, to the wider academic world. She was presenting my research, piece by piece, as an opportunity for them. She twisted my trust, my introversion, my painstaking approach to discovery into weaknesses she could exploit, turning my greatest strengths against me. I was so blinded by her adoration, so desperate for her intellectual validation, that I willingly handed her the keys to my entire intellectual kingdom. My genius, she told me, was beautiful but wild, and needed her strategic hand to tame it, to present it to the world. She wasn't taming it. She was St. Alling it, piece by agonizing piece. The department's annual research symposium was always the highlight of the year, a chance for everyone to showcase their progress, share their latest findings. I had been working tirelessly, fueled by Vivian's encouragement, to synthesize years of independent research into a cohesive presentation. It was my magnum opus, the culmination of my life's work, finally ready for the world. I remember the nervous flutter in my stomach, the mix of excitement and trepidation. Vivian had assured me we would present together, a true partnership, reflecting our combined efforts. I arrived early, found my usual seat near the back. The room buzzed with anticipation. The department head began his opening remarks, then introduced the first speaker. He called Vivian Thorne to the podium. My heart gave a hopeful leap. Here we go, I thought, our moment. But as she walked to the podium, she was alone. My brow furrowed, a flicker of confusion. Perhaps she was just starting, and I'd join her for the main body of the presentation. She began, her voice clear and confident, describing the foundational principles of a new unified field theory, a groundbreaking approach to quantum gravity. As she spoke, the equations, the conceptual leaps, the very language she used, it was all profoundly, unmistakably mine. My breath hitched in my throat. I felt a cold dread begin to spread through my limbs, a sickening clench in my gut. My vision narrowed. The room seemed to recede, the faces of my colleagues blurring into indistinct shapes. Each slide she projected onto the screen was a diagram I had drawn, an equation I had derived, a conceptual framework I had painstakingly constructed. My hands started to tremble. Then, halfway through her presentation, she paused, a radiant smile gracing her lips. This work, of course, she announced, her gaze sweeping across the room, would not have been possible without the invaluable insights and dedicated collaboration of Dr. Benjamin Carter, whose meticulous attention to detail and unwavering support were absolutely crucial in bringing these complex ideas to fruition. She gestured towards Ben, who was seated in the front row, his face a mask of discomfort, eyes fixed on the floor. He gave a small, awkward nod when the department head applauded. My blood ran cold. Co-collaborator. Not a mention of me. Not a single, solitary word. Just Ben, credited as key. The rest of the presentation passed in a blur of ringing in my ears. I felt an out-of-body sensation, as if I were floating above myself, watching this horrifying tableau unfold. My chest felt tight, my lungs struggling to draw breath. When the applause finally erupted, a cruel, mocking roar in my ears, I could barely move. I waited. I had to confront them. When the room began to empty, I pushed through the thinning crowd, my legs feeling like lead. I found Vivian and Ben tucked away in a corner of the reception area, both holding glasses of champagne, surrounded by congratulatory colleagues. Vivian's smile was triumphant. Ben looked like a man caught between two worlds, his usual open face now guarded, almost pained. I walked straight up to them. My voice, when it came, was a raw whisper, barely audible over the polite chatter. Vivian, I said, what was that? She turned to me, her smile not faltering, but her eyes, those deep, understanding eyes, were now utterly devoid of warmth. Ethan, she said, her voice calm, almost patronizing. A successful presentation, wouldn't you agree? Ben and I have been working very hard. My work, I choked out, the words catching in my throat. Those were my equations, my theories. You didn't even mention my name. She chuckled softly, a low, dismissive sound that grated on my raw nerves. She took a sip of her champagne, then met my gaze, her expression unyielding. Your genius is beautiful, Ethan, she said, her voice a cool, clinical pronouncement, but you lack the strategic vision to truly achieve. You get lost in the theoretical wilderness. Ben, on the other hand, understands how to bring ideas to market, how to package them for impact. We simply took your raw potential and gave it the structure it needed to be heard. I turned to Ben, my oldest friend, my confidant, the man I had trusted with my deepest thoughts. His eyes, usually so direct, so honest, darted away from mine, fixing on some point beyond my shoulder. He shifted his weight, his knuckles wide around his champagne glass. He couldn't meet my gaze. That was it. That averted glance, that silent confirmation, was more devastating than any shouted confession. It was the absolute, crushing validation of the theft, the betrayal, the profound, sickening violation of trust. The world tilted. I felt as if the air had been sucked from the room. My knees threatened to buckle. I stood there, utterly hollowed out, as the polite murmur of congratulations around them continued, a monstrous backdrop to my crumbling reality. I turned and walked away, not knowing where I was going, just knowing I couldn't breathe in that room for another second. I stumbled out of the building, into the cool evening air, and kept walking until my legs ached and my lungs burned, tears streaming down my face, blurring the familiar streets of Boston into a painful, incomprehensible mess. The days that followed were a blur of agony. I retreated into my apartment, pulling the blinds, answering no calls, no emails. I felt like a ghost, haunting my own life. The betrayal wasn't just intellectual, it was a profound emotional amputation. It felt as if a part of my soul had been ripped out, leaving a gaping, bleeding wound. My life's work, my passion, the very essence of my intellectual identity, had been stolen and rebranded, presented as the triumph of others. And Ben's complicity, his inability to even look me in the eye, that was the knife twist, a betrayal that felt even more intimate and crushing. I replayed every conversation, every interaction, every late-night session. The red flags, so subtle then, now blazed like angry supernovae. Vivian's endless praise mixed with subtle criticisms of Ben. Her insistence on my strategic shortcomings. Her meticulous documentation. Her hushed conversations with Ben. It was all a carefully orchestrated performance, a masterful act of psychological manipulation designed to isolate me, to extract my work, and to ultimately discard me. The genius she had so lauded was merely a tool, a resource to be exploited. Numbness gave way to a searing rage, a cold fury that burned through the layers of despair. How could I have been so blind? So utterly, tragically naive? The anger eventually sharpened into a steel-hard resolve. I couldn't stay. Not in that department, not in that city, not in that life. Every corridor, every lab, every familiar face would be a constant, searing reminder of what had been lost, what had been taken. I tendered my resignation. It was a terse, emotionless letter, devoid of explanation or embellishment. The department head called, tried to express regret, tried to get me to reconsider. I gave no details, simply stating I was pursuing independent research opportunities. I could hear the confusion, the mild irritation in his voice. He didn't understand, couldn't understand, the fundamental rupture that had occurred within me. I packed my life into a few boxes, shed what wasn't essential, and bought a one-way ticket. I needed distance. Not just miles, but universes. I needed a place where the air was clean, the stars were bright, and the echoes of betrayal couldn't reach me. I found it in Arizona. A small, remote observatory perched on a mountain, far from the polished halls of academia, far from the subtle poisons of ambition and jealousy. The night sky here is breathtaking, a vast, unfiltered canvas that swallows up all human insignificance. It was lonely at first, profoundly so. The silence was deafening after the constant hum of university life. But in that silence, I began to heal. I spent months just staring at the stars, letting the vastness wash over me, putting my own pain into perspective. I hiked the desert trails, felt the sun on my skin, the grit of the earth beneath my boots. Slowly, painstakingly, I started to rebuild. Not just my research, but myself. I rediscovered the pure joy of scientific inquiry, the intellectual passion untainted by the need for external validation or the fear of betrayal. I began to understand that true intellectual integrity, true peace, came from within. I started working again, cautiously at first, then with a renewed fervor. My own work on my own terms. There was no pressure, no deadlines imposed by others, no hidden agendas. It was just me and the universe, my mind exploring its boundless mysteries. I meticulously documented everything, but this time, it was for me. My theories began to coalesce, to mature, evolving beyond what Vivian and Ben had stolen. They had taken a snapshot of a moment, but they couldn't steal the evolving narrative of my mind. Years passed. I published my work, quietly, under my own name, through independent channels. There were no grand departmental presentations, no champagne toasts. Just the slow, steady hum of academic recognition, gradually growing as my theories gained traction, as other researchers began to cite my independent publications. It wasn't a roar, but a quiet, resonant hum that reached me even in my solitude. I started receiving invitations to speak at conferences, to collaborate with researchers from across the globe, but I always chose carefully, prioritizing integrity and genuine intellectual curiosity over prestige. The scars are still there, of course. They always will be. A phantom ache sometimes, a prickle of caution whenever I meet someone new, especially someone intensely intelligent and charismatic. But they are scars, not open wounds. They are a testament to, oh, what I survived, what I overcame. I learned the hard way that ambition, unchecked by ethics, can devour everything in its path. And that true friendship, once broken, leaves a void that can never truly be filled. Ben. I sometimes wonder about him. I never heard from him again. I hope, in time, he found a way to live with what he did. Tonight, as I look up at the infinite expanse, I feel a sense of profound peace. My life is simpler now, stripped of the academic politics and the deceptive glitter of false admiration. The work I do here is honest, pure. I am Ethan Hayes, an astrophysicist, standing under my own sky, on my own terms. The echoes of the quad are faint now, almost imperceptible against the symphony of the cosmos, a reminder of a past that shaped me, but no longer defines me. I am free.